Hello and welcome to KLM Institute.
Today, we're diving into a gripping and complex story that's shaking up global politics. The rise of the Uyghur-led Turkestan Islamic Party, formerly known as the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, ETIM, and its growing influence across the Middle East and Central Asia. Let's set the stage. You might have heard of the Turkestan Islamic Party or ETIM before, but let me take you through its history, its military strength, and the political and military ramifications of their recent victories, especially in Syria. This topic isn't just about regional conflicts, it's about shifting alliances, global security, and the complex dynamics between nations, militias, and terrorist organizations. First, let's go back in time to understand how the Uyghur struggle evolved. The roots of this movement can be traced back to the late 1990s, when the Uyghur separatists first emerged in China's Xinjiang province, advocating for an independent East Turkestan. The region is home to the Uyghur people, a Turkic-speaking Muslim ethnic group. For years, the Uyghurs have been subjected to heavy surveillance, discrimination, and violent crackdowns by the Chinese government, which views them as a threat to the unity of China. By the early 2000s, the ETIM began to make its presence known. The group took up arms, targeting Chinese officials, military personnel, and civilians to push for the creation of an independent East Turkestan. The Chinese government responded with heavy military force, and the group was classified as a terrorist organization by China, the US, and the United Nations. The ETIM was also accused of carrying out a series of attacks both inside China and beyond its borders, including in Central Asia, which led to the group being included on the U.S. State Department's terrorist exclusion list. Despite setbacks, the Turkestan Islamic Party found new ground when the Syrian civil war broke out in 2011. The conflict opened the door for various global jihadist groups to fight against the Syrian government, led by President Bashar al-Assad. Among these groups were the Uyghur fighters of TIP, who, along with other Islamist militias, sought to overthrow Assad's government. TIP fighters quickly became an essential part of the broader anti-Assad coalition, particularly in Syria's northern Idlib region, which became a hotbed for insurgent activity. In December 2024, TIP's actions took center stage again when they participated in a dramatic 11-day offensive that successfully ousted Bashar al-Assad from power. This moment marked a major turning point, not just for Syria, but also for global geopolitics. With Assad gone, TIP's fighters, many of whom have spent years fighting in Syria, are now looking at how to escalate their campaign against China, potentially targeting Chinese interests abroad. TIP's leader, Amir Sheikh Abdul Haq al-Turkestani, has even made threats, warning that China's infidels will soon face the same fate as those who suffered under the conflict in the Levant. As the situation in Syria continues to unfold, China has been careful in its response. While Beijing has long supported Assad's regime, it is now faced with a shifting political landscape in Syria. The TIP, although operating within an Islamist-led coalition, now has a substantial presence in Damascus and other major cities. The Chinese government has expressed concern over TIP's growing strength, which could lead to intensified attacks on Chinese interests or perhaps even a direct confrontation in Xinjiang. But how does this tie into the broader picture? Over the past few years, TIP has expanded its reach. After supporting the Taliban in Afghanistan's decades-long struggle, TIP is now looking at Syria as its second major success. The group is effectively training a well-organized, battle-hardened force that poses a direct threat to China's stability. Many analysts, including Ricardo Valle, a research director at the Khorasan Diary, suggest that TIP is at a crossroads. They've achieved their immediate objectives in both Afghanistan and Syria, but what comes next? The TIP might target Chinese assets abroad or even begin acting as a mercenary group, much like other Central Asian militant groups. There's also the possibility that TIP might return to its ultimate goal of liberating Xinjiang, which could trigger a wider conflict in the region. Now, let's talk about the global implications of TIP's rise. China, Russia, and India have all been closely watching these developments. Beijing has urged for international cooperation in combating TIP and similar groups. While China has yet to recognize the new government in Syria, it has reiterated its commitment to working with the international community to counter terrorism. Chinese officials have also made it clear that their priority is to secure their interests, especially in Central Asia, where TIP has had ties with other insurgent groups. Russia, on the other hand, is also facing its own challenges with TIP's involvement in Central Asia and Syria. Russia's security concerns are aligned with China's, particularly because of TIP's proximity to the volatile Xinjiang region. However, Russia has been less vocal about its stance on TIP, preferring to work behind the scenes with China to address this growing threat. India, meanwhile, has been more cautious. While it does not face the same level of direct threat from TIP, it has expressed concerns about the group's ties to broader terrorist networks, including ISIS. India has long been an advocate for counterterrorism measures in the region, especially as militant groups target Indian interests in neighboring countries like Pakistan. What about the United States and European nations? The U.S. has had a complicated history with TIP. Under the Trump administration, the U.S. removed the ETIM from its terrorist exclusion list, citing a lack of activity by the group. However, U.S. officials remain concerned about TIP's potential to reignite violence, especially as the group gains new momentum. The Biden administration has reaffirmed its stance that TIP is a threat, particularly to China, and has acknowledged the group's links to al-Qaeda in Syria. European nations are also on alert, although their focus has largely been on ISIS and other jihadist groups. However, as TIP continues to grow in strength, the potential for spillover into Europe cannot be ignored. The EU has pledged to increase counterterrorism cooperation, and European leaders have been actively working to prevent TIP from gaining further traction. As for TIP itself, the group continues to build alliances, not just in Syria and Afghanistan, but also in Central Asia, where Uyghur militants have been recruited into various insurgent factions. Their recent success in Syria has shown that they're more than just a local threat, they're now a global concern. TIP's leadership is well aware that they've made significant strides in advancing their cause, but the next chapter in their fight remains uncertain. In summary, the rise of the Turkestan Islamic Party is not just a story about a militant group. It's about shifting global alliances, the growing threat of extremism, and the complex geopolitical dynamics that shape the world today. As TIP continues to pose a threat to China and other nations, the international community must decide how to respond to this evolving challenge. As the situation develops, we will keep an eye on how TIP's activities evolve and whether they succeed in pushing their separatist agenda further, both in Xinjiang and across the globe.